Hello, welcome in guys, welcome in! Today we're going to be doing a quick little story review for the newest Wuthering Waves story, the 2.6 patch. First half, which we actually literally just finished. Yeah, I'll be reviewing the story because we finished it literally 15 minutes ago. I usually wait a little bit before I do my story reviews because I like to sit on it for a few days to let it marinate in my brain, but I'm actually going on a trip tomorrow, and by the time this gets posted, I will be away. So unfortunately, that's why I can't wait a few days to do the story review. So we're gonna do it now. So all of my thoughts and opinions that I am providing in this video will be from immediately after the story. So I literally just finished the story, and I'm not very used to doing this immediately after, but just I do have some general thoughts and stuff that I want to give you guys before I leave for my little mini vacation. So yeah, anyways, that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to talk about the story, the plot, the characters, storytelling, voice acting, gameplay, the whole shebang. Just have some nice little chats about it. So yeah. Hope you guys enjoy. Like, subscribe if you guys do. Comment down below, letting me know your guys' thoughts about everything after I finish talking, or if you guys have any, thoughts, opinions, agree, disagree with anything I said, let me know. I'm very curious to hear everyone's opinions. And also join the Discord server if you want to come chat, hang out, have a good time. And okay, apart from that, let's just get right into it then. I guess we will start off with the plot itself. Usually I like to start off with that. I think overall the story was pretty solid. It was pretty solid for the most part. The plot itself, I mean, I do have a few things to say about it, but I guess we'll start with the pacing, okay? I feel like my general thoughts on the plot of this patch was the pacing was a little bit all over the place, actually. I feel like there were a lot of parts that kind of dragged, especially in the beginning. It did feel like there were parts in this patch that were kind of more, that felt a bit more like they were just making us do some stuff to be busy, which is actually a kind of a first for me when it comes to wuwa 2.x. So I was a little bit surprised by that, but overall the plot though, the actual story, once you get into it, was really, really good and really enjoyable. So the pacing, I would say there were some pacing issues. The very beginning was really slow, actually, especially when we were first setting up the obelisks and things. Those are one of the things where I felt like they were just kind of making us do it to do it rather than it actually being any interesting. It just took quite a bit. We spent a lot of time basically setting up the hunt at the beginning, where I feel, it's good to have some build up. It's good to have some explanations for what we're doing. And it was, I guess, sort of acting as a little bit of a reminder at what was going on. But at the same time, I feel like it's not like we really learned anything new. When we were setting up the hunt, we know what the hunt is. We knew what the hunt is. They've been setting it up for 3 patches, ever since 2.4. They mentioned it. It's nothing too special, It's like we're going to fight the Dark Tide. There's going to be some monsters there. It's fine. We didn't need to spend too much time setting it up. So I feel like if we maybe cut down the beginning section a decent amount, maybe make it, 15 minutes to 20 max, I think it would have been perfectly fine. I mean, I actually don't remember how long it was exactly, but either way, if they cut down the beginning, that would have been fine. I think after that, after we started getting into what was actually happening, it got a bit better. They dragged a little bit, and that's not a feeling that I really had with any of the previous wuwa story from 2.0 onwards. And I think you definitely see that. You definitely do see it in the runtime of the patch, because I think this was one of the longest wuwa story patches that we've gotten so far, which in itself I'm not upset by. I'm fine if stories are a bit longer. Like I've said many times before that I feel like the ideal patch length for me would be something in between the Star Rail ones and the wuwa ones. So maybe 3, 4, max 5 hours would be ideal, so we have time to build up. It's just I feel like the build up that they did in this patch was not really that interesting. So if they were gonna build up the plot, they needed to give us a bit more in terms of the actual story. So, but yeah, and I think one thing that also does kind of not ruin the experience, but is another pitfall that wuwa has kind of written itself into in Resonators, is that every storyline has sort of ended up being, okay, we are fighting the Leviathan. The Leviathan is behind everything. Oh, the Leviathan is controlling the Dark Tide, which is trying to manipulate people into doing its whim. Right? So it's kind of the same storyline, overarching storyline has been repeated quite a few times already. So then that subsequently makes it repeat in 2.6, this first half, even less of a big deal, I guess. because of that fact, because we have seen that specific plot line happen so many times in Renacida already. So yeah, I'm sure we're gonna get some big reveals in the second half, but that is just like another factor that definitely has kind of, I think, ruined a bit of the surprise for most of us playing through the story for the most part. But yeah, anyways, that's just like another thing that I wanted to mention as a whole. The fish never dies like a cockroach. Exactly. Exactly. The fish is always there and causing trouble. When will we finally get rid of the fish so that we can move on to something else? Look, and I know Cristoforo's doing stuff on the side as well, but Cristoforo is also using the fish, who is doing its thing of trying to survive. So, you know, hopefully we'll be able to move past that soon, and I'm sure we will once we get the finale. And yeah, that's basically it. Like, moving on to the plot itself, I do feel like the plot definitely did pick up. I feel like the writing for the characters was really good for the most part. Augusta, amazing. I loved every moment we spent with her because it was really, really fun. And I think they did a very good job at, you know, showcasing her backstory, the whole scenario sphere. You know, I think my overall thoughts on the plot this patch was, in general, I wasn't too surprised by everything, because maybe this is like a issue that wuwa has in terms of writing the story because of like I guess the pitfall they've kind of written themselves into with the Rover being the so important, is that it kind of feels like every single patch, especially with this one in particular, it's like, oh, the hero of heroes, I wonder who that's gonna be. You know, it's like not really surprising at all. Not that I need to be surprised in every single story, but it does kind of remove a little bit of the immersion for me due to the fact that it's kind of obvious where we're leading towards, and then they do treat it like a surprise at the end of the patch too. So I was like, oh, surprise, it was Rover. Again, you know, getting there was very fun, but it wasn't anything too groundbreaking. But I do think that Augusta is a very well-written character. I loved spending time with her. It did feel a bit like a Augusta companion quest, which I guess it is very comparable to some of the previous stories. But I do think that they did a good job in this time because it was still relevant to the main overarching storyline of the Septimont and Renacida. So it didn't feel as forced as some previous patches. Like, I hate to bring it up, 1.3. For me, 1.3 I felt was very forced in terms of its execution. Again, the writing has changed drastically since then. So a lot of the issues I had with 1.3, I did not feel as much in this patch. I feel like the overarching Augusta storyline, wow, you can joke, it was a little bit of a companion quest, for sure, but I still feel like it was still very decent. It was relevant enough to the main story. And I do wish they kind of actually focused a bit more on the actual, I guess, main storyline, because they sprinkled it here and there, you know. Obviously, we are overall attacking the Sovereign, you know, the Dark Tide, you know, fighting the whole thing. You know, it's very tied to her hometown, which is why we got so much Augusta content with her backstory. But it just felt a little bit overwhelming for a main story patch, I guess. And that's why it did really feel like a Augusta companion quest compared to a main story quest, which again, still enjoyable, but that's one of the things I kind of had to like, it's a little bit awkward. But my main issue was more so with the fact that I feel the entire story was very predictable. Yeah, not every story has to be super, super surprising, but this was a very predictable patch. And then I do, you know, Iuno and her whole, there were a lot of actually plot twists with the Iuno. I was surprised. We got a lot more Iuno in this patch than I expected. So that was also, I think Iuno was a pretty well done character there. And Avidius, I think, is a very well-written character as well. I actually quite like him. He's one of my favorite NPCs in the wuwa story thus far. So like I said, it's not like all bad. It's not all, I guess, not boring necessarily, but it's not all too predictable. You know, Angel, I think what they did with Angel and then the kind of allusions that they have to maybe, oh, is Angel maybe related to Galbarina? Perhaps? I don't know. I thought that was also pretty cool and well done. And Booling being related to the Black Shores was actually a bit surprising for me. I don't know why it was surprising, but I thought she was going to be related to some other entity. But yeah, anyways. Yeah, most of my issues from this patch do kind of stem from the plot itself not being like the most interesting plot that we've gotten in Renacida thus far, which is again, like my own personal opinion. If you guys disagree, let me know. I would be very curious to hear what you guys have to say on that. But yeah, still overall, I think pretty solid. Again, the yap wasn't too much. It's not like, you know, there was a bit slow in the beginning, but apart from that, I didn't have really many issues with the talking. Most of the dialogue was very interesting, and yeah, especially with Augusta, essentially. She's shown a lot in this patch, okay? I think they wrote her very well. I am actually really invested in her as a character right now, which is a problem because I need to skip her, but I don't think I am going to because she's just so cool. So yeah, anyways, story plot, again, this is a bit of a mess, but story plot, yeah, those are my issues with it, but still pretty solid overall, especially given the fact that it is a build-up patch for the second half of 2.6. I just don't think it was as, like, I'm just not as big of a fan of it as I was with, let's say, 2.4, right? Again, 2.4 was a bit of a climax patch too, so, you know, different things there, but those are my thoughts on the patch immediately after playing it. So, storytelling. Okay, I think storytelling in this patch really shown. Obviously they didn't do anything too like crazy, kind of like they did in 2.4 with the whole like, I guess, storybook idea stuff, but I think they had some very amazing improvements in the storytelling this patch, even from before. I mean, for the most part, 2.x has been crazy with their storytelling in wuwa, but a few of the notable things that I remember were the CGs. I really loved how they used a lot of CGs this patch. I feel like the CGs that they gave us this patch, actually, the number felt like it exceeded what we've gotten from previous patches, especially given the fact that they were using the CGs just to kind of showcase some of the backstory too. Like, they used CGs to show the battles from the past rather than just explaining the lore to us. And then we also got to see like the myths and things like that. So I thought the CGs and the usage of the CGs, I'm glad that they are branching outside of just using them for the main characters that we have, because I really liked being able to also witness the world building with the CGs themselves too. So CG's amazing. They also had a live 2D cutscene at the end, which it's not the first time they've done it, but the cutscene that they had this time was really amazing. So it was cool to see different animation styles within the cutscenes themselves that are not just the animated 3D models, which look cool, but the variety makes it feel even more cinematic and even more of a, I guess, varied experience, which is really cool when I'm watching the story. So yeah, that was also pretty sick. The map intro, this is like kind of a small thing, but when they introduced the map for the first time, when we saw the Griffix flying through the entire map with all of the cool angles, I thought that was really cool and really fun, because we got to see the map through a really just fun fly through. So it made me excited to kind of walk through the map after. So that was also really nice. And of course, all of the Augusta cutscenes, Iuno cutscenes, imagery, beautiful. No complaints there. Nothing too much to say there. They were just as solid as ever and very nice. One last thing for the storytelling too is I also noticed, this is a very small thing, but when we go into the Sonorosphere and we actually see the like ghost echoes of Augusta, like when she was younger, I feel like all of the previous patches where we have seen those types of echoes of the Tacit Discords, before, I only remember them ever being like, the solid character model of the ghost, right? And then we kind of just talk to it and see the model there, but they actually fully animated the ghost this time as well with the younger Augusta and Angel. So that was also just really cool little detail that I saw that they added in, which kind of shows that they have been even working on improving their previous storytelling in even just like kind of more minor ways there too. So I thought that was really nice. And yeah, so storytelling, fantastic as ever. So no complaints there. The voice acting, amazing. Don't have much to say. Everyone sounded amazing. Obsessed with their accents. Augusta, Iuno, the emotional moments, oh my god. Oh yeah, Avidius too. Avidius, Angel, even the NPCs. Yo, some of the NPCs in the Augusta Sonorosphere were insane as well. Like, I felt there was this one kid, I think his name was Luke, I think, the one who had the brother with the broken leg. Dude, I actually got emotional just listening to that kid talk. It was crazy. So, voice acting, those voice actors are paying their bills, okay? No complaints whatsoever. Fan-fucking-tastic. yeah, the gameplay was pretty fun. It was just, I mean, I don't really have too much to say about the gameplay. You know, we had our battles, did a lot of fighting. Ooh, the Augusta boss fight at the end was pretty sick. That was surprising. Like, while I kind of objectively thought, I had a feeling that Augusta wanted to fight us, I didn't expect to actually fight her as a boss in the game. So that was really cool. And it was actually pretty difficult too. I found myself losing most of my health at certain points. So I actually had to play properly and not just spam clicks. So yeah, the gameplay was just fun overall, and I think with the storytelling that wuwa does with their stories, I never really have much of a complaint about running around and just fighting monsters because we have so many just cool shots and angles and pans that we see even while we're just talking to the characters. So, oh, I did like the sequence that we had when we were, you know, getting attacked by the monster though. I feel like I really like it whenever wuwa does those sequences, so that was also pretty sick. You know, did a solid job of making us have to dodge all of that stuff. I was lagging a bit, which ruined it a bit, but that's not necessarily their fault, so I'm not gonna fault them for it. I mean, I think that's basically it. Again, I'm sorry if this review was a bit of a mess. I'm not used to doing this immediately after the story, so my thoughts are kind of all over the place at the moment. But yeah, I guess my overall feelings about it kind of are summed up with the story was pretty solid, pretty decent, nothing too special. I do feel like it would have been nice if it wasn't as predictable and if they maybe focused a little bit more on some of the parts that were, you know, giving us a bit more lore. But again, it is a part 1 of 2 of a part 1 of 2 patches. So like this is the part 1 of 2.6 and 2.6 is the part 1 of the finale. So this is like the very beginning. So I understand them not giving us too much plot in terms of like too many reveals, you know. But, you know, I'm gonna judge the story for what it was, which was that. It was like, you know, just kind of an introduction, nothing too special in terms of that itself. But the storytelling, of course, was fan-freaking-tastic. I had a great time playing it, regardless of the fact that I wasn't too, like, crazy impressed by the overall plot. Oh, okay, one thing before I give my rating is that the little reveal at the end of Iuno being mysteriously erased from existence, so that I'll give them credit where credit is due. Yeah, they did a good job at kind of teasing Iuno, because now I'm very curious for the second patch, because they built up Iuno's story very interestingly, and then so that was a pretty big surprise. The fact that at the end when you talk to the NPC, we learned that Iuno actually has disappeared from existence, which she did imply during the story. So again, there were some things that were surprising. It's just the overall, you know, the whole Rover is the hero. I feel that was a very big plot point that was very obvious, so wasn't too impressed by that. Anyways, story rating. Okay, I'm gonna rate it here. This is my overall rating, okay? I'm gonna rate the story itself, and then I'm gonna rate the storytelling, and then combine the two, because that's usually how I judge my ratings for the most part. The story itself, I'd give it like a 7, I guess, a 7. You know, it's nothing special, it's nothing too special, but it was still pretty solid overall. It wasn't a crazy story, but they executed it effectively with the way that they told it. So I'd give it a 7 out of 10 for the story itself. The storytelling, I give like an 8.5, okay? 8.5, very solid overall, very enjoyable experience. Beautiful scenes, beautiful shots, lots of CGs to tell us the backstory. So I think my overall rating for my wuwa 2.6 story experience, I would give it like a 7.5 to an 8. 7.5 to 8 approximately. Like in between there is my overall feelings for it. Maybe leaning towards 8 just because I feel like the storytelling really did carry it. The storytelling definitely carried super hard. So maybe like an 8 out of 10 for an overall, I guess, experience. But yeah. Solid intro has me very interested in the Iuno part. Again, I was very pleasantly surprised by how much Iuno was in this, because I do think it's more realistic that Iuno is quite, you know, intertwined with the main storyline, especially because Augusta and Iuno are such close companions who have been working towards this end for so long. So execution, pretty good apart from some pacing issues and the plot itself not having too much to it. But yeah, it's build up, solid build up. Excited for the second part, and those are my general feelings on the overall wuwa 2.6 story experience. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Let me know if you guys agree or disagree with anything I said. And I'm sorry if I missed anything. If I did miss anything, let me know in the comments and I'll try to cover that next time as well. And also, yeah, join the Discord server if you guys want to come chat, hang out, have a good time. And apart from that, hopefully you guys enjoyed my story rating. Let me know your thoughts again, and I guess I will see you guys in the next one. Bye bye bye.